They say love is the answer, they say
What's going on? This is E40, the one and only 40 Water, with the soundtrack for the town, shouting out BAMBDFEST 2021 International. Produced by the Lower Bottoms Players, BAMBDFEST 2021 International from Oakland to the world, live from the Black Arts Movement District in West Oakland. Sponsored by Earl Stevens Fine Wines, man. You know what I'm talking about? Support the culture.
I love you. I love you. I love you.
I hope this reaches you with good health and spirits, moving in and out your life. See we coming with that light force, funk it down in the town, praying that it takes its course. Reminiscing on the beautiful places, the different faces, exotic stages. This music takes its high for real. I know that fear for real, but still. They say love is the answer, they say love is the way. Missing the world, I hope I see you again someday. In isolation, trying to find the right words to say.
All right, greetings everybody. I am Shaka Jamal from Olu8 Film and Culture, representing for the third BAMBDFEST Film Festival. And here today, I got somebody with a very, very powerful film that we're going to be taking some snippets of and letting you see and feel a little bit what it's all about. So here with me today, I have Mobolaji Olambiwanu, right? Ferguson Rises. It is who is the director of the Audience Award winner for the Tribeca Film Festival in 2021 as a feature documentary. Welcome, my brother. Welcome. How you doing?
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to be here.
For sure, for sure. So how does it feel to be an Audience Award winner at the notorious, at the great Tribeca Film Festival?
Great. I mean, it was a shock. But we put in a lot of work, and we had hoped a lot of people would see the film, and they did, and they voted for it and they enjoyed it. So couldn't wish for anything better as a filmmaker, right? That people actually enjoyed your film and voted for your film. So we're extremely grateful and humbled by people's experience with the film and their appreciation for the film, because almost 7 years of work, so you want to make sure that after that much of your life has been invested in something that hopefully it gets seen and gets appreciated. So we're glad that that's happening. So couldn't have asked for a better culmination to an almost 7-year journey. So yeah.
7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how did this 7-year journey begin?
It began with, so my wife was pregnant at the time with our son, who is now 6.5 years old. So that goes to show how long this has been going on. So she was pregnant at the time. And,
a whole life.
And I was working. Yeah, exactly. And I was working in shooting a short little experimental documentary in Watts And the whole goal was to sort of create these counter narratives about communities that are misunderstood and maligned. And so my goal was to see how the people of Watts, in particular the Jordan Downs housing projects, how they found hope, love, and beauty in the midst of their situation. And so in that process, I was talking to people in the Jordan Downs housing projects, not about the problems that occurred, but about how they find hope, love, and beauty. You know, what they love about the Jordan Downs housing project, what gives them hope, et cetera. Again, with the intent of creating a counter narrative. And then right around that time, Michael Brown was killed. And you know, my wife, or I kept thinking, man, I really want to figure out a way to create a counter narrative in Ferguson. You know, Michael Brown was killed at the age of 18. You know, I was arrested and framed by the police when I was 19 for a crime that I didn't commit. So, you know, so I couldn't help but think that could have been me. Mm-hmm. And then now my wife was pregnant at that time. So then it just sort of, you know, evolved. And I kept thinking, well, that could also be my son, you know, and what would I do? You know, what kind of narrative do I want to create for my child that allows him to, as Ta-Nehisi Coates would say, allows him to live with the all of it, you know, with the experience of being Black in America. What kind of narrative can I create for him that gives him a sense of hope in the midst of all this tragedy, right? And so for me, I was deeply inspired, unfortunately, by Michael Brown's death, by my connection to it via my, you know, arrest and frame for a crime that I didn't commit, and also by the fact that my wife was getting ready to have our child. She was about 2 months away from delivery. And so I kept thinking about all that. And I kept thinking about my parents who came to this country as immigrants in the 60s. My mom came in the late 50s. My dad came in the early 60s. And right around the beginning of the civil rights movement. And I remember asking them, you know, what did you do during the civil rights movement? And they said, hey, we were studying. We didn't really do anything, you know. And I just remember as a 20-something-year-old person who was politically active after getting arrested and framed, I remember thinking, you know, that's not a sufficient enough answer for me. And so I kept thinking, hey, you know, years from now, when my son is 20, he will ask me, he will look back on this historical moment and say, what did you do? And my answer could not be that I did nothing. And so this film was born from that. Was I knew that someday he was going to ask me this question, and I did not want to answer the question incorrectly, you know. And so that really was what inspired the film. And a lot of my, you know, so after all this happened and all this started jumping off my, I kept thinking I need to go to Ferguson. You know, I need to go to Ferguson. And but my wife was 7 months pregnant. She was having a hard pregnancy. And, you know, and I was not going to ask her, like, you know, hey, can I leave you lying in bed, pregnant and uncomfortable and sick, and go somewhere and risk my life to go make a documentary? So that was just not you know, that was not coming out of my mouth, you know. But so after thinking about it for a week or so.
You thought about it, though.
Exactly. I thought about it. But after about a week or so, you know, she's in the kitchen or something, and then she turns to me and she says, hey, I think you need to go to Ferguson. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, I think you need to go to Ferguson with that whole love and beauty, that whole idea you were talking about. I think you need to go to Ferguson. And I was like, you know what? That's exactly what I've been thinking for the last week. I don't want to say anything, but that's exactly what I've been thinking. She's like, yeah, I think you need to go there. I think this is the film. This is the film that you need to make. And so that's what began the journey. So I was like, with her permission, you know, I was like, all right. And I called up my friend who's a cinematographer, and he happened to be off for the next few weeks. I'm like, yo, you know, you're off. You know, I'm gonna book a ticket, and then we'll work our way backwards and figure out what we're gonna do on the ground once we get there. And so it was all sort of luck in a weird sort of way, because we didn't really know anybody. I'd never been to St. Louis, and I didn't know anybody on the ground. So it took, in some cases, years to build some of those relationships, which is also part of why it took so long, and years to raise the money. You know, years of stopping and starting and stopping and starting, you know, maybe, you know, probably off for like a 2-year period where, in the middle there where I was just trying to figure out how do I get money to finish this thing.
That's right.
You know, so the journey of an independent documentary filmmaker makes it such that you, in the process of making the film, you got to learn how to be a producer, learn how to be a fundraiser, learn how to be, you know, all the things you need to be in order to make this film successful. And I think, you know, in film school or other places, people learn how to make films, physically how to make films, but they don't really teach you the hustle. They don't really teach you what you need to actually get the money to make the film. Like when you have the money, they show you how to make the film when you have the money, but they don't show you how to get to the point where you have the money to make the film. You know, and I think that's the part that I had to learn. You know, so despite all the education, despite everything else, I didn't have the understanding of how to get that money to be able to start the journey in the first place. All I knew is I had to start. You know, and thank goodness I did not know what it took to make a movie, or else I may not have made it. You know, if I knew it was going to take me almost 7 years, I probably would not have made this movie. I would have probably been daunted from the beginning.
Yeah.
But you know, luckily I didn't know. Luckily I was naive, and luckily I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. And I think, you know, and the beauty of that is that then once I was halfway through, you know, I was like, well, I can't stop now. I'm already halfway through. You know, and you know, I should be done in another few months, and then that few months turned to another year, and then that year turned another 2, you know. So then I was like, okay, I'm almost done. I kept thinking I'm almost done. I'll be done in a few months. I'll be done in a few months, and then it just kept going on and on. And then we finally got to the point where we raised enough money where we were able to finish. So I'm giving you a long story, but
yeah, it's a good story though.
But that's you know. It was all, you know, it was all a series of surprises. And as I've mentioned, you know, to other folks, I feel like the spirit of Michael Brown Jr. called us forth, you know, on a spiritual level. I just feel like, you know, the idea that my wife was simultaneously thinking the exact same thing I was thinking without us talking about it, or you know, that she felt the energy. I feel like that something was operating on another level that was calling us both to see the same thing, and to know and to take this journey without knowing anybody in St. Louis, without, you know, knowing what we were going to do, without knowing what the story was, without, you know, any of that. Something called us forth to take this journey, you know, and it, you know, it made me a better filmmaker and a better person as a result of that experience. So, you know, I'm grateful for the spirit of Michael Brown that made this all possible. I think if he had not, in some way, shape, or form, you know, spoken to me either on an emotional level or a psychic level or whatever you want to call it, this film would not have been possible. You know, so you know, yeah, in a way, you know, I'm clear that his spirit was speaking, and I think what I will say to that effect is that when I finally got on the ground in Ferguson, I'll just tell this quick story. When we went to the site where Michael Brown was killed, there was this energy, very hard to describe. I've never experienced it at any other time in my life, but there was there was a tremendous amount of vibratory energy. That's all I can describe it as. I could feel my body quivering and shaking at the spot, you know, just gently shaking, like with this like quickening of energy. And I thought, well, what is going on? And I turned to my cinematographer, and he said, "You feel that, man?" And I'm like, "Yep, I feel that." He's like, "Man, this is wild." And I was like, I thought it was just me. I thought this is just, I'm like, am I crazy? And he's like, "Nope, I'm telling you, I feel that energy too." So when we were there, we felt this incredible, powerful energy at that spot. And then, you know, 6.5 years later, I knew I felt something really powerful at the spot, but I'd forgotten what that was. And when I finished the film, and I watched the last cut, or one of the last cuts of it, my body started to vibrate and shake in that same way. And in a way that was for me an affirmation, in a sense, from Michael Brown Jr., from the spirit of Michael Brown Jr., that we did the right thing, that we did right by him, we did right by his family. And to me, that was the most important thing, was how do I honor the spirit of this life that was lost, the spirit of this person that was lost too soon, and at the same time honor the humanity of even those people who disagreed with his humanity at the same time. And I felt like I want to tell his story. I want to tell the story of what happened and the impact that it had on the community. Whether or not I agreed with those people or not, I wanted their voices to be heard as well. Not just the people I agreed with, but the people I disagreed with, because I think the only way that we can get at a true level of humanity is to be able to listen to one another. And so this film for me was about speaking to the humanity of Black men, speaking to the humanity of Michael Brown Sr., and by extension, speaking of the humanity of Michael Brown Jr. In such a way that we can understand that, sadly, that Black people feel. I think, unfortunately, this society has this notion from whether it be our music that they produce or the TV shows that get produced or whatever else, that Black people really don't have feelings. That we don't really operate on a deep emotional level, which is racist and sad, but honestly the truth. I think people really don't know that. So for me, it was imperative that we featured and focused on Michael Brown Sr. in particular, because it's rare that we talk about Black men in grief. It's rare that we even talk about men in grief in general, but let's put more specifically, it's rare that we talk about Black men in grief. And it's rare that we focus on, on brothers from working class backgrounds, from the hood or whatever you want to call it. It's rare that we focus on the feelings of brothers from the hood who we think don't have feelings, because they may look, they may not look buttoned down, be wearing a shirt and a tie. All of a sudden, it's like they don't have feelings, and I think that's the misconception that our society lives with, that enables us then to go down and allow police to gun down someone and feel like they did something wrong and like they deserved it, and so it was important for me, again, to humanize Michael Brown Jr. via humanizing his father, so we understand that no matter what happened, we should be, life is sacred, and that we should honor life as best as possible if we're in the law enforcement field, and outside of that field, we should honor life because life is sacred. And I think I wanted people to connect to the sacred in all the people of Ferguson through this film.
And I can tell you, thank you for that. I felt that energy watching the film. It's like once I turned it on, I just had to. It just drew me in more and more and more. It just continued to reveal itself to deeper and deeper levels. Because I thought I knew a little bit of something about it. I've watched a documentary or so about Ferguson, but this one revealed some aspects that I didn't know about, but also some aspects that other folks just maybe haven't covered. Like you said, the Black man's journey and healing, and the suffering, what it's like to lose a son, and what you did with Michael Brown Jr.'s father. That was powerful, because many times, when people are killed by the police, many times we hear the mother's perspective, and usually we see the fathers in the background. But your piece, it allowed the father to really have a say, which we normally don't see in media. And it caught me by surprise, because it started there, and then we were able to see more and more about his father and how he was navigating the whole thing. And even though, this particular, what we're doing here, we're not going to be able to show the entire piece, because one thing I also want to congratulate you on is that your film has been picked up by PBS, right? Yeah, so now that it's been picked up by PBS, we can only show these short little clips. So I just want all of y'all to know that what we're talking about here, you're going to be able to experience the whole thing. But right now, we're just going to show you little clips, so that once it's available to the world on PBS, we want all of y'all to be able to go watch, support, leave your feedback, and connect with the film, with the people of Ferguson, and with our director here.
November 8th on PBS. Yeah.
November 8th on PBS.
All right. Independent lens, and I think it's I think it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I have to check the time, but on Independent Lens on PBS November 8th. Yeah.
9 or 10 West Coast time?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I don't.
Probably.
But yeah, November 8th, I would say just, yeah, look it up on PBS, and November 8th eventually. It'll be up on their website, and they'll say exactly what time it's on PBS in your area. But yeah, I mean, I think this, yes, it'll be all over the country, but I don't know what time it'll be all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's the same time. So we'll find out. For
sure. So, you know, we've been talking a little bit. I want to dive right into one of these clips so people can see. We're going to play about maybe 3, maybe 4 clips. Just to give y'all a little taste about of what it is that we're talking about. So let me pull this up right here.
If you want to know why people are angry, a young 18-year-old boy's body stayed out there for 4.5 hours and cooked in the sun. That's why people are mad as hell in Ferguson.
What made this different was that his body was out in the street. They brought dogs in before they brought something to cover his body.
You only can push people for so long until they get upset.
Before I be a slave, I'm gonna be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!
The Ferguson, Missouri community is calling for action after a police officer reportedly shot and killed an unarmed teen.
They shouldn't have left his body in the street for 4.5 hours. The highest form of disrespect, particularly for people who, for about 200 years of their history, cannot bury their dead, cannot have proper funerals, cannot ritualize them properly. And so to leave him in the street is an ancestral form of disrespect.
Put your lighters up for Mike Brown.
Okay, that was a quick one, y'all. That was a quick one right there. And now I'm gonna let y'all know there were so many great clips, but we can only show a few of them. You know, we don't get with our brother get in trouble with PBS or anything, lose his contract. You know, I think they say it was about 100 degrees that day.
Mm-hmm. Close to it. I think in the 90s, high 90s, yeah.
High 90s. And they said they left him out there uncovered for 4 hours.
4.5 hours, yeah.
4.5 hours on that concrete, on that blacktop, as people sat around and watched. And the lady said they brought out dogs before they brought out anything to cover him with, or any type of paramedics or anything.
Mm-hmm. And kids walking by him, and that's one part we didn't get in there, but you know, kids were, it's the middle of summer, kids are home.
Oh man.
You know, it's in the middle of an apartment building with families, so kids are looking at that body on the ground, and you know, and the same lady who said that they brought out dogs does tell a story, which I had to cut out of the movie, I didn't put in there, but of a little child who says, you know, who explains to her that I saw, I saw Mike on the ground, like a little 4-year-old child talking about seeing the body on the ground, and so talking, she was talking to this little child about how they had seen the body on the ground. And so, yeah, that's what was going on. So the level of psychic damage, what do you tell this 4-year-old who's walking by this body and sees this body, what do you tell them, And I think, we have, all the school shootings that are in predominantly white areas where, they get counselors and they get all sort of kind of stuff, but we have shootings that occur in the Black community all the time. Counseling, I doubt it.
It's like, get over it.
Yeah, support, I doubt it, right? And you don't have, it's not normal for 4-year-old children to see a dead body, or people of any age for that matter, but a 4-year-old child, the level of trauma, the level of, fear that they have of police, of the state, is just sort of embedded in them at such an early age is highly problematic. And I think so. Yeah, I think that clip speaks to the trauma that was imposed upon the community, that really sort of inspired people to rise up and say, look, we're not going to, this is unacceptable.
And repeated trauma, because as the brother says at the end, this is something that's been going on since, our people were enslaved here. Right? Not even having power over your loved one's deceased body.
Yep. And exactly, this is exactly what happened, right? And they got everything, taped off on the street, and you're unable to, and Michael Brown Sr. talks about it, and certainly Leslie McSpadden is Michael's mother talks about the idea of being unable to reach your child. Like, you see your child in the street dead, but you can't, the police, nothing, you can't get to your child. You can't even, you can't, so imagine the pain of being a parent and child is hurt or dead, and you can't even cradle them, you can't hold them, you can't do anything. They're just, you're being held back by, by the police, in essence. I just can't imagine what that experience was like for the family. And I mean, the community, but even more so the family.
Yes. And he speaks about that more deeply in the film, about no one was asking where are the parents. Even people he knew on the police force turned their backs on him.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I think yep. And I think that speaks to what people think about, I think also Black people, right? Like, you see a kid dead on the street, you automatically in your head just assume they don't have any parents, they don't have any family, they're just some thug or some kind of person who's not worthy of respect, even in death, to be covered, to have there be inquiry about his parents, nothing, and I think that's we live in a sad state in America where I think, there's a perception of Black people that really is, unfathomable and unacceptable, really. So.
Man, it's a deep one. It's a deep one. I want to dive into the next one that gives us more of a history about Ferguson and race relations and police and everything. Let's dive into that one.
When people be like, I'm so surprised that the racism is so high in St. Louis. People that live here is like, yeah, that's the Lou for you, It was one of the last states to free slaves, and that means a lot because, like I say, it's still reflected in everyday policy. It's still reflected in certain communities. It's still reflected in everyday life for individuals. So, you think you was coming up north to get free. It really wasn't. You came up north and you stayed south.
We really are more up south than Midwest. We really were one of those initial stops on that highway coming up from Mississippi and the Gulf. And a lot of folks, when they came here, really engendered a lot of Southern culture. And you still feel it tangibly.
We are in the state of Missouri, which was a slave state during the Civil War. This state has some very famous cases that come out of it. The Dred Scott decision comes out of this state. Shelley versus Kramer, which dealt with unfair housing practices, where there were restrictive covenants, where people couldn't move into certain neighborhoods. We also have out of this state, we have the McDonnell-Douglas case, Green versus McDonnell-Douglas, the first case that talked about how employers couldn't retaliate based on one's activism, based on political or social issues.
One real criticism that I grew up with was the idea that St. Louis never really had a movement history. St. Louis never really resisted. Like when other cities went up in flames, either due to Martin's death or with Malcolm's death or any of the other uprisings in the city, the thought was that St. Louis had no activity on the ground and didn't participate.
Any of our kind of organizations, if you will, many of them started during times when we were much more racist and sexist society, some even starting in slavery. And as a result, we start practices and policies that perpetuate.
So policing was set up so they would see and target Black folks. They would often find folks and find ways to ticket and harass them. And even when those areas began to transition to be majority and predominantly, if not all Black, those same behaviors tended to stay rooted there.
History in Ferguson is deep.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that about the Dred Scott case and all the other cases. I was like, oh.
Yeah, we forget that St. Louis was pivotal in sort of in establishing negative precedents for Black people for a long period of time, I guess, in a sense. And so, but I think we could say that, but at the same time, I think just the good news is that Michael Brown, his murder by police, in a sense, has transformed the world. I mean, I think the awareness, the organization, the structures that were built were the structures that were employed when George Floyd was killed. That then made that, even more of a global incident than Michael Brown's death. Had those structures not been set up in Ferguson as a result of Michael Brown's death, George Floyd's death would not have had as much resonance as it did across the world. So I think what we're seeing now is that the organizations have been built, the structures have been built in order to be able to respond to these incidents. Unfortunately, after they've happened, I wish we could stop them, but at least there's a response now where we can go global with our response and really have the world see, this aspect of America that has been oppressing Black people for such a long period of time. So I think we get to see that, and the rest of the world gets to see it as well in a way that was never possible before social media.
Yes.
Before these massive global Black Lives Matter movements were set up, and I think it was the Michael Brown's death that sort of led to the setting up of these Black Lives Matter movements across the globe that are now being, interestingly enough, maligned, whose leaders are now being maligned to undermine that movement from spreading and having the level of efficacy that it has, because I think that's scary to some people. So, but without Michael Brown's death, none of this would have happened. And I think we have to understand, that Ferguson is a microcosm of this country. What is happening in Ferguson is what's happening. Or as on the ground there in Ferguson, people would say Ferguson is everywhere. And I think that's the best way to describe it. Ferguson is everywhere. And
sorry about that.
I was just saying it's in Brazil, it's in Nigeria, it's wherever, it's everywhere where there's corruption and abuse of power.
Yes, and even though the North might have won the Civil War, it shows the Confederacy is still alive, and strong and doing their thing just under another name. And maybe this just came about the Civil War, maybe it just never ended. You know, some of the laws and some of the lines may have changed, but what people are actually fighting for is still continuing, and there's still people there who want to keep it the way it was. You know, and yeah, I just want to give thanks for you for being a part of that pushback and that struggle, and even documenting this and having your film ready for the world to see in the time of George Floyd. I just want to ask, what is it like for you to be working on this film for 7 years and then George Floyd happens?
I mean, it was interesting. It's an interesting journey because there was a period of time in between Michael Brown and George Floyd where people weren't really that interested in the film. Where a lot of the gatekeepers who are not Black people, who are quite often white people, see these events as separate and isolated incidents and don't see the historical connection between these events. And so for a lot of those people, I believe they felt like this event was not, the Michael Brown killing was not relevant anymore. So there was a period of time where we really struggled to get the word out. And to get people to respond to the film and the journey that we were taking. And then when George Floyd happened, unfortunately, when his murder happened, we kicked into high gear and people began to support us in a way that they hadn't supported the film before. So this last year, we probably, raised another $100,000 for the film in the last year, which I don't think we'd done that in any of the years prior. We'd raised, significant amounts of money. I don't think we'd raised $100,000 in 1 year. And I think that really, was a result of George Floyd's murder, So unfortunately, someone had to die. And someone has to die often for the awareness to build, and so that is that's deeply unfortunate that had to happen that way. But it was because of that happening that we were able to. So we give thanks, to the spirit of George Floyd as well, because that without that and without his passing or his murder, we would not be able to bring the story, would not have been able to raise the money to finally finish the movie the way that we did. And we would not have the kind of audience we have now if people didn't understand this or didn't begin to understand this as systemic. The rest of America, Black people knew this was always systemic, but the rest of America did not. And so I think we're beginning to have those conversations, again, since the 60s, we're beginning to have those conversations again because of what happened with George Floyd.
And may we never forget. May we never forget. And that makes me also want to just highlight, I didn't bring in the intro. This is all about the Black Arts Movement Business District Festival that we have going on here in Oakland. And it's happening in August, which is Black August, the commemoration to all the freedom fighters, the Black freedom fighters who came before. Specifically George Jackson and, many of the Panthers who laid down their lives for us to be able to do what we are doing here today. I remember a quote of the Panthers were driving around. Oh, I can't. His name is slipping me now. He's our most famous film.
Huey?
No, Huey, but he was with one of our filmmakers, photographers.
Gordon Parks?
Gordon Parks, yes. Sorry, I don't know how I forgot his name. So I guess they're rolling around together, and everybody pulls out their straps, right? And they look at Gordon Parks. They're like, "Yo, where your heat at?" And he pulls out his camera. He said, "This is my heat right here." And there's all different ways in which we can participate in the struggle. Participate in our own freedom, participate in our people's freedom. And this is one reason why this film festival aspect of the BAMBDFEST is so important to highlight. And I mentioned this in one of the other interviews that I'm going to have for the film festivals, that, you know, media is one of the most powerful entities that we have in the world. It shapes our minds. It allows us to connect to our physical world, our spiritual world, our psychic world. And without it, we wouldn't be who we are right now in 2022. Right? Because this is a film. The film is a form of art that's been around for less than 150 years. Right? But it's changed and shaped so many things. It has built governments and taken them down. Right? It has spurred movements and it has crushed movements. And this is something that I just really want to highlight, is that it's not just a film that we're talking about. It's our life, it's our history, and it's our future.
Well, that's what I often say. I said, you know, long after the streets are cleared and people have gone home, the thing that will always be present is the film and the media. So we, you know, in documenting this moment, we allow this moment to last forever. We allow this moment to remain present in people's minds, whereas it would disappear after the streets were cleared.
That's right.
You know, and I think it's important to understand that without media and without capturing that moment as Gordon Parks did, and capturing those moments, you know, we would not be able to tell our stories, and we would not have our stories documented in a way. Well, particularly if we don't make our stories, we would not have our stories told in a way that has us be heroes and be at the center of the story. You know, and I think that's also important as well. And I think Gordon Parks capturing the Panthers the way he did, you know, and you know, I'm hoping that in the spirit of Gordon Parks, you know, I captured this community in a way that that allows people to connect with it from this point forward. And not forget this moment, this pivotal moment in history, and helps people to understand that it was a pivotal moment in history.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, I think people don't even always understand that.
It reminded me, I tell you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Give thanks. Let's jump into another clip. Oh yeah, this one right here. Okay. Let's get this 105.
Nobody woke up that morning when their loved one was dying and say, hey, I want to be the face of the movement. I want to be at 9 o'clock news. I want to be the next morning and be on CNN. I don't want to do this. I want to be all tears down my eyes where my children crying as the casket lowered down in the ground. Nobody woke up in the morning and say, I want to be that voice. Because what Mike Brown does is he gave me a voice.
I think August 9th probably began the transformation of my life. Probably think that we're crazy. We probably a bunch of young black radicals. Who just want to burn the city down. That's not true. I'm just mad and want to see some change.
We must organize, and organize.
Yo, man, I got goosebumps. Woo! Hey, I watched that clip a handful of times now. Hey, and it gets me.
Thank you. I've seen it so many times. I can't. I have no perspective on it because I've seen it. I've been seeing the same footage, some of the same footage for almost 7 years. So it's like I can't even.
Oh man,
I can't even tell sometimes. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you know, this goes back to what you were saying. It's like, you know, taking the perspective of the working class, what you say, or quote unquote the hood. And what this brother said, he said, "Hey, yo, niggas have set the tone here, and they ain't going home, right?" Because many times, you know, in the media and many times in our movement, also, it was a middle class thing, you know, and entertain,
respectable,
quote unquote respectable people and entertainers, who had money funding the movement, giving it to those quote unquote respectable people. And this is different, you know, and it's a different time. It's a different time also. And
yeah, it also, I mean, I think there were those the sort of talented 10th people who came and organized the masses and shaped the way the masses thought, say, hey, we need to rise up. And I think this is far more organic in that it was the masses who then chose independently to rise up.
Yeah.
And then these other leaders came in afterwards to try to help shape the conversation. But the conversation was already being had without them. So I think it was a much more decentralized, much more leaderless movement, which is, I think, probably the only thing that will be successful in coming generations.
Yeah.
You know, because leaders, you know, can disappear and then the momentum is gone. But this movement had a much more organic, you know, had much more organic roots and had folks who had never been active, who didn't understand the nuances of politics, out in the streets, learning the nuances of politics. I think one thing that that we touch on in the film, I think that's important also to understand, is that people's lives were shaped also in positive ways by Michael Brown's murder. And so his death, you know, as at one point the film did have a line, which is no longer in there, but that he did not die in vain. You know, and I think that's clear if we look at the people whose lives were changed and transformed, from his father, most importantly,
yes,
to shifting from a regular person to someone who was sort of you know, thrust into a more activist mindset, a more community mindset. And then we look at all the young activists who came out of nowhere, who had no real sense of direction, some of them before this started, and then who found a purpose, who found a sense of direction. I mean, this film is essentially about, you know, how people find purpose in their pain, right? And I think there's a universal message there that makes it more than just a film about police violence or the, you know, the murder of Michael Brown or whatever you might want to simplify it, you know, to be. This is about how do you find purpose in your pain.
And you revealed that pain. Goodness gracious.
Yep. And how do you take that bad situation? You may be experiencing it as the death of a loved one from cancer. You may be experiencing it as, you know, the breakup of a marriage, whatever it is. But how do you find purpose in that pain? And I think the people of Ferguson have laid the groundwork for us all to be able to understand, you know, how you find purpose in your pain and how you turn that into activism, into community building, into things that are lasting for both yourself and those around you, in a way that that allows for something positive to come out of something horribly tragic. You know, I think that's what the people of Ferguson have really shown me. Have really showed me. That's what they've really showed me is how you can take something that is so terrible and you know, and spin it into gold. You know, and I think that's what they've done. They've created gold. You know, they've turned lead into gold. The alchemy of activism, you know, I didn't realize that's two A's, the alchemy of activism.
Yeah.
You know, but they've used the alchemy of activism to turn the situation into turn a horrible situation into something that I think has benefited the community in ways that we will not understand maybe until 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, much like I call it the Selma of our times, right?
Ooh,
and I think that's what it was.
Yes. And have you been able to stay in contact with any of the people that you were involved with creating the film with in Ferguson? Like, do they know that it's won the Tribeca Film Festival? Do they know it's going to be shown on PBS? Do they know they're going to see themselves eventually?
Yeah. Many of them saw it online at the Tribeca Film Festival because it was available nationally. So many of them saw it. And then I'm also heading to St. Louis next week for the 7th year anniversary of Michael Brown's murder, unfortunately. And I'm going to spend some time with the family and do a private screening for them and their friends, the fundraiser for the nonprofit that they've set up, the Chosen for Change Foundation. So we'll, they're aware of it, and they're pleased that we've honored their son and their community in this way. I can't speak for everybody in the film. Maybe not everybody's pleased, but I felt like I tried to be as even-handed as possible with everybody. I mean, even the people, again, that I disagreed with, one thing I can say for sure is that, that whether or not I agreed or disagreed with them, they welcomed me into their homes. They shared several hours of their time. And I thank them for that. And there's much love and respect for them for that, because they didn't have to do that. That's particularly right. Knowing that I may have a different perspective than they do, and still allowing me into their homes. There's some people who did not allow me in their homes because they didn't perspective. So for these people who did, who had the courage to do that, I thank them and I appreciate them for telling the truth about their experience and their perspective, even if I disagreed with it, because I think it's important and instructional for all of us to see that there are different perspectives, and to take what we can from those different perspectives to better understand the world that we live in and what happened. So yeah,
that's right. Give thanks for that. I had another clip, but I think we're giving them just enough.
Yeah,
I really think, because anything more, you be watching almost the whole film. Yeah. And I just want to encourage people, like, some of these clips that we have, they're just the tip of the iceberg of what you're going to see and what is revealed through this powerful documentary. And this is definitely something I'm going to be watching again, because it's just, man, it reminded me of how powerful that time was when our brother's life was taken, and when Ferguson was front and center for weeks and for months. And like you said, many times people either completely forgot about it or just came to our back of our heads. And many of us that are involved keeping attention is like another person has lost their dad, another sister, another brother, and it just kept going, and it just kept building. And when we do pay attention to that, we hear Michael Brown's name repeated along with the many other string of Black folks' lives who were taken way too early, even assassinated, some of them in broad daylight on camera, right? And it just reminds us that, life is precious. And it also reminds us that it's important to know what it is we are living for. And I believe this film does that. And it lets us know that it is not easy. It is not easy, because his family, his father, have to continue living afterwards with that, with ever justice or injustice that has happened since that time. And that is also revealed through the film. How do you live with all of this in the months of all this death and destruction? And that's something I think that also people forget when we see these headlines.
Yep, exactly.
So I got to commend you for the layer of depth and humanity that you were able to reveal in this film, because that's life.
Thank you. No, and I think also, I want to be clear that that I made this for my son, and I say this often because I did not want someone else to dictate his perspective on this. I wanted it to shape his perspective on it myself. you know, and I wanted to define it for him rather than allow the world that doesn't understand or respect him to define it for him. You know, I wanted to define it in a way that allowed for a sense of redemption, you know, a sense of purpose in the pain, and a sense that that all is not lost. Unfortunately, lives were lost, but in the midst of all this, we don't have to allow it to take over our consciousness in a way that we lose sight of what's still possible for ourselves, for our people, for our culture, and for humanity. And I think, you know, the news does not frame it like that. The news frames it in a way that's very simple and very trauma-inducing and oriented. And I feel like we have to begin to shape things in a way and see things in a way that isn't just about the trauma, but also about the resurrection, right? It isn't just about the crucifixion, but it's about the resurrection, you know. And I think and this is what I want the film to be about for people: is yes, we have the crucifixion, but there is also the resurrection.
That's right.
And there's also the possibility. There is also the hope in the midst of all that. And we as a people are resilient, always have been. Have made it through so many different things, and this is but one of those moments, you know. As I mentioned to some of my other friends, I said, Donald Trump, I said, people were scared about Donald Trump. And I said, you know, Black people have survived through slavery. They survived through so many different things, massively horrific situations. And it will take more than Donald Trump. It will take more than a little, you know, these blips on the radar of history to destroy us as a people, and because we have discovered resilience, and we are the example for America of what is possible.
That's right.
When you look at people who are able to be so resilient, you can learn something about yourselves. You can learn something about what you can bring to your life from looking at Black people, you know. And I think so. In another way, this is about honoring Black people and Black lives, and honoring the resilience and the power and the beauty of Black people, because I think this country often looks at the pathology, but doesn't look at you know, the pathologies in the community, but doesn't look at what is possible if we actually respected Black people, if we actually look to Black people as an example of what's possible in the midst of tragedy. Because the only people who turn around consistently under the face of constant oppression and repression are Black people. You know, maybe our native brothers and sisters, also our indigenous brothers and sisters as well. But this film is not about them. Not to say that they don't deserve their respect in their films, but this film is specifically about Black people and the example of resilience that we've set for this country, if this country chooses to pay attention. You know, and this is about giving this country an opportunity to pay attention to that, and to look and to see, what have you missed? What are you misconstruing? And what is possible when you turn your head in another direction and see the power and the possibility of Black people.
Yo, give thanks. Give thanks for that. Yeah, let them know. Let them know. So everybody,
yeah,
this is the coming to the end here. So how can they find you? Let's wrap this up. Let them know how they can find you, more about the film and
yeah. Like our website is hopelovebeauty.com, which is the original concept that inspired the film, was how do you find hope, love, and beauty in the midst of tragedy? So our website is called hopelovebeauty.com. But if you type in fergusonrises.com, it'll also direct you to hopelovebeauty.com. Or if you type in Ferguson Rising, it'll also direct you to hopelovebeauty.com. So there are a few options, but our core website is hopelovebeauty.com.
Give thanks. So, thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you.
I'm hoping to be able to reconnect with you later on, you know, after the premiere of on PBS, and just let us know, because I'm sure that even in the back of your mind, PBS is just one step towards getting the film out there more and more to the people.
Yes,
So,
I mean we're looking to also partner with community organizations, faith groups, other things. So if you have ideas or people who you want us to partner with to do some community screenings at some point, to get the word out, because I mean I think it's not about making film in a vacuum for me. You know, like some people, you just make a film, you dump it out there, and you're just gone. And that was never my intention with this film. My intention with this film is to really use this film and leverage it to push public policy, to push cross-racial dialogue, or transracial dialogue, to push a new way of looking at policing in America, that encompasses the feelings and the experiences of the community that is being policed. And so anything that promotes that dialogue, any suggestions that you have, you're free to email us through the website, and let us know who we can partner with and what we can do.
For sure.
Right.
Director Mubalaji Alambiwanu. Did I get it right?
Yep. Mubalaji Alambiwanu. Yes, sir. All right.
Oh man, thank you everybody, and thank you for tuning in. BAMFest, Dr. Nzinga, thank you for giving us this platform, and we're going to be seeing y'all again soon.
All right.
Peace.
Yes.